JC Shurburtt from inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. JC, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, nothing much. Doing well. Love Thursdays. A lot of good energy today. A lot of positive vibes. Disappointment last night on the hardwood, but guys fought hard and looking forward to. It's kind of weird because we've had so much baseball. Very few days off since the season started. I'm kind of missing it tonight, so I'm looking forward to tomorrow and watching the Gamecocks hit the old ball yard again.
Well, especially, JC, when you're playing as well as the Yard Cocks are, you want to play every single day, right? You're just itching to get back after it. But let's start on the basketball side of things because, of course, last night, South Carolina suffers a really tough loss to the second-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. But I really like, JC, what you said this morning on your show on Inside the Gamecocks, which, the word hope, that it provides hope. And I know at times this season, I know you admittedly – had maybe not had quite as much hope as you would have liked just because it's been really, really ugly and really hard to watch at times. But maybe a game like last night, despite the fact you didn't win, maybe a game like last night is one of those results or one of those efforts, if you will, that does give you some hope in the future of this program under Lamont Paris. Your just overall thought on that and the game itself.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been as far as rankings go, probably the biggest win, obviously, since Devin Downey took down Kentucky during the Darren Horn era. As far as regular season rankings wins go, obviously, nothing really compares to the Final Four run. But it would have been a significant win and one of the biggest upsets of the year in college basketball. This is a team that part of the reason I didn't have a lot of hope was this is a team that's gone out there and just gotten blown off the floor so many times. And then they'll rebound and do something, a little bit better and compete and go get road wins or whatever and all this stuff. And, so it's been a little up and down. My concern and what kind of fed the whole hope thing was more so from a recruiting standpoint, a lay of the land standpoint, and a NIL standpoint to a certain extent. College basketball is so transient these days. You have to hit the portal. You have to do this. And I just, this by and large is a portal fueled or portal built team. And they're not very good. So collectively, but that was part of my problem. And what gives me hope now is you sort of look and you see the competitiveness and all that, but you also see a guy like Jacoby Wright coming into his own. You see the improvement with Josh Gray. Josh Gray's got a lot to work on this offseason as far as being a better offensive basketball player, but I think he's certainly capable and he's playing with 10 times the confidence he used to. My goodness, he's 7 feet tall, 260 pounds or whatever. I mean, and he's grabbing a lot of boards, really playing a lot tougher. I like what I've seen out of Zach Davis this year. Michi Johnson is playing a lot more consistent. I think he's getting more and more healthy. I don't think he always was early in the season. So you have some guys that, and I didn't mention G.G. Jackson because I don't think he'll be back next season, but some guys that you can carry into next year that can form a leadership nucleus that have gelled with Coach Paris. Coach Paris is familiar with them, all that good stuff. And then if you can go add, I hate to say it, 5 or 6 pieces from the portal, I think you can get this thing to competitive. And maybe you're only looking at, one down year this year record wise from where Frank Martin had it. And then, of course, the idea is to get South Carolina into the NCAA tournament on a more consistent basis. That's what everybody wants. But, performances like last night, not so much from the team standpoint, but also individually, you can see some real growth happening there. And I think that's a good sign whenever you have a new coach that things are heading in the right direction.
Yeah, JC, when you talk expectations and building the program, I mean, what do we feel like the expectations are? Because obviously Frank Martin was relieved of his duties because of one NCAA tournament appearance in a decade. Granted, that tournament appearance was a Final Four run that is the greatest run in school history. But, I mean, I feel like it's got to be somewhat of a luxury, right, for Lamont Paris, that he's probably going to get a couple of years to really get it going. Nobody, I mentioned this again on your show. I don't feel like anybody's going to come into next year saying, well, if you don't get to the NCAA tournament in year 2, like that's going to be a really bad sign. He's on the hot seat. So, I mean, what do you think realistically? How long do you feel before realistically the Gamecocks can start competing and let's just say even pushing for, NIT? Do you think it's realistic that next year this team could make that type of jump and be set a postseason team to some degree?
It's tough because of the transfer portal. I mean, because you don't
Right.
know who's going to be in and who's not going to be in. And then in basketball, it's so competitive for like your top line guys. I think what they're going to have to do is kind of maybe do a little bit of what Shane Beamer has done and scour the lower levels for guys that can come play. Now, that's also easier said than done because in basketball, we've seen guys transfer up for, oh my goodness, Virginia played Texas Tech a couple of years ago for the national championship. And how many guys from lower levels did Texas Tech have on that team? Chris Beard and those guys. Virginia has some transfers as well. So it's easier said than done, but you got to go find guys that you can kind of put together. Sometimes you got to outsmart people, and I think we've seen 2 examples of that with Frank Booker coming in for Frank Martin. Frank Booker averaged 4 points a game at Florida Atlantic, comes in as a double-digit guy under Martin. Well, he figured out, hey, he's better than what he's produced. Michi Johnson's kind of the same way. He's a guy that was kind of on the bench at Ohio State and wasn't healthy and things like that. Well, now look at him. I mean, he's a really good basketball player. There's a reason he was ranked in the top 100 or whatever as a recruit. So sometimes you got to kind of duck and weave and find guys. As much as people sometimes get on Hayden Brown, I don't think there's a problem with Hayden Brown being on your on an SEC basketball roster at all. And I'm not just saying that because he went to Burns. I think the problem is when you're relying on Hayden Brown to be your star or one of your stars each and every night because he's probably more suited to be a blue collar role player type. So, just all in all, it depends on the portal. If they can go get a solid group out of the portal, I think, and then everybody comes back that should, and they make a jump. I'm talking Wright, Gray, Johnson, Hankins, Sanford, Zach Davis, those guys. There's nothing that says South Carolina can't, get right there, middle of the pack, maybe even better if the ball bounces their way. You think about this, Chris. You go down in overtime to Vandy. You go down in overtime to Alabama. You lost by 2 against Arkansas at home, and you lost a heartbreaker that you could have won at the buzzer at Georgia. They're 3-12, so that's 4 wins. They would have been 7-8 in the league with 3 games to go right now, which I think Frank was 9-9 his last go around. So they wouldn't have been too far off pace. I think, what killed this team early and finished them off early were those 3 games in Charleston, which were quite frankly inexcusable. And I don't know every one of those teams is well coached, and Lamont Paris was just kind of starting out and gelling his team, but man, those were ugly games. Every single one of them. You get waxed by Furman, waxed by Davidson, waxed by Colorado State. That's going to have people jump off the bandwagon real quick. But so I don't know that right now, as it stands, they're as far off as maybe we thought. They're not going to go 1-17 in the league or whatever. But if you could take that nucleus, continue to get those guys better, and then add some pieces, shoot, I mean, we could see them in contention for a tournament bid next year. Now I say that, and I want to remind everybody before they go, "Oh, you're crazy." South Carolina's been in contention for a tournament bid every year since the year before the Final Four. They at some point in February been on some bubble or something, played their way out of it ultimately. So they've been close. I mean, it's not like they've been that far off. So I think that's realistic to shoot for next season. But like I said, it just kind of depends on who he can find in the portal and if they want to come and if you get them and how they gel and all that. But it does give me a little hope that there is a group of guys right now that we can see, Chris, getting better and playing better basketball, getting more confident, that kind of thing. That's coaching. That's establishing your standards for a program. That's those are some things you look for in a first-year head coach. And for the first time last night, it kind of dawned on me, because it's easy to do it in one game, right? But you do it over time, and you start looking, going, "Hey, this thing's getting better." That's what gives me hope moving forward.
Now, JC, before we get into baseball, let's talk a little South kind of football here because FanDuel released some early lines. And of course, I'm somebody that I love the gambling side of things. I think it gives us a really good indicator of, just obviously what the sharps in Vegas are thinking, but what a sort of the national perception is of a certain game or your football team. And, obviously Shane Beamer don't give a damn about gambling lines because the Gamecocks have just shown time and time again that they'll be 14-point favorites, 17-point favorites, 20-point favorites, and they'll get the W, right? So it really doesn't matter, but it's a fun talking point for people like you and I. I bring that up because, again, FanDuel dropped early gambling lines, and South Carolina, a 1.5-point underdog to the North Carolina Tar Heels. Does that surprise you? And why do you think that is? Do you feel like that's going to be a trend that UNC is actually going to be a favorite in that game? Because I know that when we posted that graphic, most everyone was pretty shocked to see it. I mean, you're just overall thoughts. I mean, again, I know we're talking football in February, but it's never too early to look ahead. But I mean, do you expect that to be a game that you think will be a pick 'em? And why do you think that is? I mean, my only thing I could think of is they must not be very high on the Gamecocks defense. And I think they would be expecting a high scoring game in the battle of Rattler versus Drake May. But just overall thoughts, does that line surprise you at all? And would you expect it to move?
The closeness of it doesn't really at this point, Chris, just because the Vegas guys have, or at least one online sports book I saw, or two of them have Drake May as the uh, leading contender for the Heisman next year. Like he has the best odds of anyone, and so they like that kid, and heck, I do too, man. I'll tell you, the previous staff that was here, and talking to somebody that would definitely know all about it. Recruiting, we were talking about recruiting in North Carolina one day, and he pointed out to me, he's like, the one we really wanted, the special that that we were really sad we couldn't get any traction on is Drake May. Um, and I was like, yeah, he's a good player, but I'm beginning to see why that was. And so I get it. It's a neutral site game. I think Vegas has been wrong more than they've been right about the Gamecocks under Shane Beamer, which is different because it used to kind of just go according as planned. Uh, but you never know. Somebody may not have a good grasp on geography and understand that Charlotte, North Carolina, is closer to Columbia than Chapel Hill. Maybe they think it's in North Carolina. I mean, because it is, but it isn't. I don't know, but that it didn't surprise me that it was close because I think there's still some questions when you look at South Carolina uh, externally. On paper, you look and you say, well, who's going to be the running back? Well, they got a kid coming in from Newberry. They probably, the guys in Vegas probably don't know a lot about this guy. Oh, well, they lost two of their top three receivers in Jalen Brooks and Josh Van. Well, they lost their entire tight end room. Well, who do they, and so I get it. There's question marks even on offense, and then the defense is probably going to lose two draft picks at corner. Veteran linebackers like Brad Johnson and Sherrod Green, starting defensive tackle in Zach Pickens. Jordan Birch walked out the door. Gilbert Edmond walked out the door. And so you look at that too, and I could see where it'd be close, but North Carolina, I keep saying their defense is going to be better because they recruited really well on that side of the ball, a bunch of big time defensive linemen. But man, they haven't done it, and I don't know that they will. I mean, I think that's you got kind of and Mac has done a really good job there. Second go around, don't get me wrong, but you got kind of a match made there where you got a guy that facilitated a culture at Texas that they're still trying to dig themselves out of, and get at a program that has kind of had that similar culture at times through the years. So, I don't know that. Yeah, I think that type of thing is sort of intangible, but I think that's kind of what you look for when you talk about North Carolina next year. Are they going to be tougher? Are they going to be able to play defense? I can't say they will. So I would probably have the Gamecocks favored myself, but the closeness of the line, considering the questions that have not yet been answered, but will be around the Gamecocks program. I think by the time we kick off, Chris, I could see South Carolina going all the way anywhere from a 3 to a 7-point favorite if things go well this offseason. Let's just say that like that.
Yeah, I would expect the same. And again, it's obviously an early spread because these rosters will inevitably change. I think the Gamecocks, I know you and I agree, I would think they're going to go back into the portal when it opens back up and get somebody. JC, by the way, just curious, do we know? Do we have an idea of when spring practice is going to get started? First or second week of March? Do we have an idea or no?
I haven't seen a schedule unless they released it, and
Yeah, I haven't seen
I didn't.
anything. I just
I
wasn't
know
sure.
that the spring games look tracking towards April 15th.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's but that's shoot. I don't know. And see, I don't know if they'll do like 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 Alabama and South Carolina and a lot of schools do this. They'll have like one or two practices before spring break, and then everybody goes on spring break and they come back and finish it out. And the reason they used to do that, or they do it at certain places, Alabama's actually not doing it that way this year. Is you want to get guys thinking about the approach to practice, whatever you're going to kind of implement. And then they go on spring break and have a good time. But you want stuff kind of in their mind before they come back, so you don't have that big of an acclimation period when they get back. So I don't know if Shane Beamer's planning on doing it that way this year or not. So we'll see what happens. But I wish I did have a date to share with you on that, but I don't have one as of right now.
Well, just around the corner for sure. And I know we'll be
Yeah,
discussing it.
soon.
Yeah, soon for sure as it comes into play. And again, it's never too early to talk football and certainly looking forward to it. Let's move, though, to the Diamond, JC. What a start for the Yardcocks, especially offensively. Of course, a 5-0 record, but South Carolina right now hitting 374 with 20 home runs. They've scored double-digit runs in each of their 5 games played this season. I mean, just your overall thoughts on the offensive production. I know you guys talked with Mark Kingston, you talked with Monty Lee, and, those guys were confident coming in the year, right, with an older veteran lineup, but I don't even know if they saw this start coming. Your overall thoughts on just the offensive explosion that's taken place through 5 games.
Yeah, it's almost like these guys got sick of hearing that they couldn't hit the ball, right? um, no, it's the approach, and it's like you said on the show earlier. The approach is just different. It's they're you know not swinging away at bad pitches. There's not an overt emphasis on the long ball, and I think sometimes when you don't in baseball, when you're not trying to hit it over the fence, sometimes you hit it over the fence, because it's you're selective and you get a hold of one. Um, and I think the players they brought in, Chris, are pretty good. I mean, you think about it, Gavin Cass is a pretty good player. And he's really good. McGillis, who came in from Southern Miss, really good player at Southern Miss, especially in the postseason for the Golden Eagles. You got a guy like Carson Hornig, who's who's coming to his own. Used to be a younger player, now he's older. Braylon Wimmer's playing the best baseball he's played, both on defense and hitting. I mean, my man's hitting 526 right now with 3 homers and 12 RBIs. That's a big time deal for Braylon Wimmer. And then you have other guys like Cole Messina and Talmadge LaCroix are doing what they need to do. Caleb Denny's doing what he needs to do. Evan Stone is getting on base, right? The 571 on base percentage. He's not going to hit great, but he's getting on base. 6 walks on the season. And I love the fact too that, and this helps your confidence when you get into SEC play and you can't play everybody to empty the bench. I love the fact that 6th, 7th inning comes along. Here comes Michael Braswell, Jonathan French, Kevin Madden, and Dylan Brewer. Some of the guys we knew from last year. They come on in and they've been doing their part. And I think anytime this is why blowouts are probably not the best viewing experience for fans, but blowouts are awesome if you're on a team because the guys that don't ever get to play, and then everybody's happy and they come back the next day wanting to work even harder and they enjoy coming to practice. When you're losing or just scraping by and things aren't always going well, or things aren't going well at all, people get disgruntled because then the kids on the bench are like, well, why don't I get a shot? It becomes more of an individual thing. But teams that blow people out tend to have pretty good camaraderie and things like that because, hey, everybody's getting a swing at it, right? So I think that's been important too and will continue to be as we move forward, prior to SEC play. And another thing is too, that I don't blame Kingston for emptying the bench because as much as this program struggled with injuries, right? It's always a good idea to have people ready to go. And so I think that's been important as well.
Yeah, depth certainly important in baseball. When you think about SEC play, JC, like you mentioned, and interchanging different guys, you're going to need all hands on deck when you take on that SEC gauntlet, the best college baseball or the best that college baseball has to offer, for sure. JC, last thing before I get you out of here, and of course we got a big series this weekend against the Penn Quakers. But moving back to the football side of things, because the big news of the week that will affect college football nationally, at least, is the chatter is beginning. Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated, many reported on it, but earlier this week, he tweeted out college ball leaders are moving closer to recommended clock rule changes meant to reduce plays in games for the safety and game length reasons. Sources tell Sports Illustrated. These are the four proposals: prohibiting consecutive timeouts, for example, icing kicks, no untimed down at the end of the first quarter and third quarter. This is where it gets interesting. The clock running after first downs, except inside of 2 minutes and a half. And the final one, clock running on incompletions once the ball is spotted. So, first thing, JC, is this: are college football games too long? And your just overall thoughts on these proposed rule changes, and are they really for the safety and to reduce plays, if you will? It feels like it's a bit of a decision made for business, which is normally what these decisions revolve around. But just thoughts on these proposed changes to the game and in an effort to shorten the games, if you will.
Yeah, early in my career, I was working in Gainesville, Georgia, at a newspaper, and so I was there in '03. And Mark Rick, I think he was in his third year, and in the '03 season, they tried some stuff like this, like, and the games were way short. They certainly went a lot shorter that season. I mean, it was like 10, 15 plays a game or out. And Mark Rick made the comment. He's like, I don't know why they want to do that, because what you're doing is just taking away what the fans love, which is watching their team play. We have, most teams in college football are guaranteed 12 games a year. So the other 353 days a year, we're sitting around like me and you talking about it, right? It's not like baseball where there's 56 ball games, or basketball where there's 30, or the NFL where there's 17 in the regular season. I mean, it's only 12. If you're lucky enough to get to a bowl, 13. And so to me, anything that tries to cut that back, I mean, my God, it goes so fast as it is. The only thing with the length of games that I think gets crazy is like when you're trying to watch it on TV. Like, I know I was watching the Gator Bowl, and I wanted to, like, literally jump through the TV and strangle the Mayo Bowl people, because I was watching that awful game between Maryland and NC State, and they kept calling timeout. So, we had to catch the first part of the Gator Bowl on ESPN News. That's fine. I mean, I'll take that inconvenience television wise every now and then, for the maximum amount of college football, which again is what we all love. Now, as far as the specific rules go, 1 and 2, I don't care. I mean, there's rarely an untimed down anyway. The icing the kicker thing, it takes a little bit of the strategy off, but then it avoids unfortunate situations like where your kicker nails the kick because he's already kicking when the timeout happens, and then the next one he misses. That's a little bit. I don't like games being decided like that, so that's fine with me. But this whole first downs, I that's too big of a strategy, a breaking strategy for me. And then with the incomplete pass thing, you're eliminating like the spiking of the ball to stop the clock and running your field goal unit on. I mean, that's going to cost somebody a game. And then what happens if you have a referee? Because this is going to happen, Chris. An officiating crew, okay, home team goes, throws the ball out of bounds, and the ref is or incomplete. The ref is like very slowly going to spot the ball while the field goal team jogs on. Or if they're pulling for the other team, they're going to go really, really fast. And I just think with the way officiating is so inconsistent between the crews and all that, you're opening yourself up for major issues at the end of the game if you if you do that, or before the 2-minute warning or whatever. Because obviously inside of 2 minutes. No, I'm sorry, the incomplete pass thing's till the end of the game. So that's right. So yeah, I mean, you're going to run into some end of the game issues with that, with not with spotting it after an incomplete pass. So I that would be the absolute worst thing of all four of them. But the third one with not stopping them on first downs, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm just not a big fan of it because the strategy is you get a first down, you stop the clock, that kind of thing. So the first two, like I said, I wouldn't care. The second two are hard no for me. But then overall, though, I don't think there's any reason to be wanting to shorten college football games. If you want to shorten it, but they'll never do this because of money, like you said. Make the timeout shorter. No, can't do that, can you? So that's kind of how I feel about that.
Well, and it's like you mentioned too, man. I mean, there's only 12 or 13 games in a season, and most college football fans, I think, would watch the games if they were 6 hours long. You know what I mean? Like you said, you only get so many of them. So I just
and we wait all year for it, right?
right.
I mean, we're already counting it down, man.
Right.
It's February, so yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I do agree with you. I think the rule changes would be preposterous, but either way, above our pay grade. JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks, the Big Spur. JC, always a pleasure, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time, and definitely looking forward to doing it again next week. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Have a good one, bud.
Yeah, man. Take care.